Well, that happened. 2018 was a really weird year for me. Ignoring music for a second, in early to mid-May, I was at a personal all-time low, to which I went in detail on, and on the last day of July, I'm pretty sure I was at my all-time high. And I only bring that up because I have no idea how to properly lead into this year's popular music. Like at all. Obviously, the only way someone could like every hit in a year would be if they were a simpleton that had no sense of a developed taste. But I just look at all the genres that matter this year, and I'm left wondering why the general public is content with the states they're in. The only actual pop star we seem to have left in the mainstream is Ariana Grande, and thankfully she knocked all of her singles out of the park this year. But the only other songs this year that could be looked at as pop had EDM or trap blended into the mix. And genre evolution is fine, but it all just seemed to blend together for me. And to quickly go over the other genres, the acts that mattered the most this year go as followed. Marshmello for EDM, Florida Georgia Line for country, Bad Bunny for the Spanish market, Imagine Dragons for rock, although that one's just a given at this point. Comedy was actually on the map for once, but we don't want to talk about that. And of course, Drake. Hip-hop may be the only genre that actually matters right now, but despite the years that acts like Cardi B, Post Malone, and XXXTentacion had, it was nearly impossible to argue that Drake ruled this year. But I'll be dealing with him more than enough in this video, so we might as well just get started. The rules for my list are simple. The song had to spend at least 2 weeks in the top 40 of the Hot 100 during the 2018 chart period, which is December to November, hence why this video is coming out now opposed to January when it probably should come out. In the last few weeks in November, I usually don't put on new editions, so songs that first become eligible during that period can also be eligible for next year. If I did cut it off a little harsher, one of the top 5 best list entries for this year would have just barely made last year's best list. But enough prelogue, these are the top 10 worst hit songs of 2018.
I'm upset.
Number 10.
My head is disrespect.
There's a popular term called critic bait, which commonly refers to a song or project that was seemingly tailored to be liked by critics. And that's perfectly fine. Good music is good music. Personally, I think there's a very different version of critic bait, but it's entirely different to what I explained. Because every once in a while, you get that one song that you know you can take down with ease. Last year we had 2, Body Like a Back Road and Look What You Made Me Do. Both were admittedly very easy to take apart. This year, well, I think a lot of you already know where this is going.
I still see your shadows in my room. Can't take back the love that I gave you.
And let's be clear, the only reason this almost didn't make the list is entirely down to production and vocal melodies. The melody of the production is again directly pulled from Sting. And you could argue that I really shouldn't throw Sting under the bus by crediting him in the title cards, but he or his label allowed an utter unknown to jack it, so that's really all I need to not feel bad. Although now I'm seeing a headline about how Sting is threatening to sue Juice WRLD with a lawsuit over Lucid Dreams, so maybe I'm in the wrong and should not be crediting Sting. We'll see what happens moving forward, I guess. I mean, it did work out for him because when you include his work with the Police, it's his third, technically second, highest peaking hit. And he got this placement thanks to the new 2018 breakout artist, Juice WRLD. Yes, his fucking name is Juice WRLD. You can't make this shit up yourself if you tried. And I've heard a lot of this dude in 2018. From his debut album, Goodbye and Good Riddance, which I hated but could see what he was trying to do, to his collaborative project with Future, World on Drugs, which I thought would be a concept album where Future drugs the hell out of Juice WRLD to see how he reacts. But of course, I was giving them way too much credit and thinking they would come up with something like that. And outside of that, he's appeared on tracks with Lil Yachty and, for some fucking reason, the Chainsmokers. And out of all the shit I've heard, there's a total of 2 songs that I actually like from this dude. I think he's a horrible writer more than 9 out of 10 times, and he has Post Malone's voice with a hint of Lil Yachty in there, but his whinier tones are very grating. Not to say I hate the rest of his songs, but oh boy does he have some shit out there. If his other single, which is literally called All Girls Are the Same, didn't peak 1 number away from the requirements, it would have been very high on this list. But we aren't talking about that, we're talking about the single that was a hit, Lucid Dreams. And since I've already set it up that this song has absolutely horrible lyrics, let's just get right into those.
Can't take back the love that I gave you.
You know what? I understand what he's saying here. You give someone so much love and when they hurt you, you feel like you wasted positive energy on them. And you still care about them because of the good times. But you absolutely hate their guts for the bad thing or things that happened. Am I going in too hard on a song that is okay just because I don't like the rest of the guy's material?
I cannot change you, so I must replace you.
No, I was right the first time. I cannot change you, so I must replace you. Is the type of shit a lunatic would say to their outdated smartphone, not their fucking ex. Actually, why the fuck would he be saying this at all? In the context of his album, Juice WRLD's ex-girlfriend broke up with him, and during the intro is fed up and demanding that Juice WRLD leaves her the fuck alone, constantly asking him to stop calling her. And we never really get context on why they broke up, very likely because Juice WRLD did some shit that was a justified reason for a breakup. I mean, why else would he just conveniently leave off why they broke up on an album full of being depressed and whiny over said breakup? But either way, they aren't together because she was the one who did the breakup. And All Girls Are the Same follows said intro, and then we get here.
I cannot change you, so I must replace you.
Ignoring how the word replace is genuinely unsettling and not in a good way, yeah, you got dumped. Moving on is the right way to not let something ruin your life. But of course that line is immediately made pointless as he follows it up with easier said than done. And yeah, moving on from getting your heart broken is easier said than done. But that doesn't mean you're allowed to be a whiny little bitch all day long.
You found another one, but I am the better one. I won't let you forget me.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. So this girl is really tired of Juice WRLD calling her, and now we know that a lot of that is because she's already moved on and is with someone else. But that doesn't even matter because apparently Juice WRLD is way better than this new person. And even though I have nothing to go off of in terms of this new romantic partner, based off of everything I know from Juice WRLD's writing in general, I'm willing to bet that they're a hell of a lot better than Juice WRLD. Especially since the line I have left from that set is this.
I won't let you forget me.
So not only is Juice WRLD not being mature and getting over this, he's willing to be so obsessed with his ex that he will do all the shit to get in her way so she can't forget about him. Am I the only one who hears how fucking gross that mentality is? This is basically one step away from having stalker vibes, and we think this is normal enough to make a smash #2 peaking hit.
I know that you want me dead.
Okay, let's ignore the fact that he is very, very likely just exaggerating here. Even if he wasn't, based on the line I just talked about, is she unjustified? Because if we take Juice WRLD's lyrics in the album's intro and use them against him, all she's trying to do is move on from him while he's being all bitchy and won't leave her alone. So if she really wanted him dead, either A, she would be doing a lot more than what we've heard, or B, it would only be a mental note because again, he won't stop calling her! Does Juice WRLD even understand what he's saying?
I have these lucid dreams where I can't move a thing.
Oh, so he just doesn't, like at all. Cool. No, that's fine. So Juice WRLD very blatantly had no idea what a lucid dream actually was. I mean, he does now. Every Genius annotation where he refers to what he's saying here has him referring to sleep paralysis, which is the thing he's actually describing. But still, nobody told him he was using the term wrong. Record labels really don't care what these artists say as long as they say it over, quote, fire production and or with a good melody. Sad times indeed. Okay, I need to get through this quicker. It's time for a lightning round.
Thoughts of a wedding ring.
You very clearly have the mental processing and decision making of a middle schooler, so this line is far less cutting than it would have been on something like, say, Call Out My Name by The Weeknd.
Who knew evil girls had the prettiest face?
Very clearly the mentality of an edgy middle schooler going through their first breakup.
You made my heart break. You made my heart ache.
This is such a cookie cutter sad boy line. I'm pretty sure I cut my ears listening to this with all that edge.
You were made out of plastic, fake.
We really are giving a middle schooler a wait, repeat that last one?
You were made out of plastic, fake.
Alright, I'm done. All I'm doing is attacking a middle schooler's breakup anthem, and middle schoolers have it so hard as it is, so I should not add to the pile any more than I already have. Let's just move on, something that all of these edgy middle schoolers will hopefully do in time.
Everyone, I won't let you forget me.
I'm upset.
Number 9.
My head is disrespect.
So if I didn't make it crazy clear in the intro, I am so tired of Drake. People have claimed a year as the year of Drake before, but even with 2016 in mind, if there was one year that was truly the year of Drake, it was 2018. Granted, I look at it more as the decade of Drake because we live in hell, but 2018 is when Drake not only got on my nerves, but he just annoyed the hell out of me with almost every turn. And to be honest, I actually had hopes for him this year. God's Plan was okay, but I didn't really give a shit. But then Nice for What came out. And even if I really didn't care for it at first, it is a genuinely good song that is only really held back because I absolutely do not buy it coming from Drake. And I still can't tell why he made it, especially in the context of Scorpion. But before Scorpion dropped, Drake had already spent 17 weeks at #1, with 15 of those being in a row. I was already kind of bored of him, And then Scorpion dropped. I listened to the album after the first tracking week, but before we got the chart placements. And I went in with an open mind, I tried ignoring the reactions from everyone, and I listened to Scorpion. I do not put it lightly when I say that it is the worst album I heard coming from 2018, aka a 1 out of 10. My 4th ever. It frustrated me so much, in considering the number of tracks and what happened with views in 2016, I was rightfully concerned. But then I remembered that Billboard was changing their formula moving forward, starting the week Scorpion would impact the Hot 100. It would be a notable album bomb, no shit, but it wouldn't be absolute doomsday. And then it happened. I was sitting in the DMV when I got the update. Drake had 7 top 10 entries at once, breaking the Beatles' record. All 25 songs charted on the Hot 100, with the lowest track debuting at 57. Along with those 25 tracks, Look Alive and Yes Indeed were still charting, so Drake got the record for the most songs charting at once with 27. A record he took away from himself, by the way. Nice for What became the first song to go to number 1 on 4 separate occasions. Drake became the first artist to debut 4 brand new songs in the top 10 at once. Drake surpassed Taylor Swift as the artist with the most top 10 debuts with 16 total. Scorpion became the first album with 7 top 10 hits this century, and at that point 3 of those songs weren't even singles. Drake tied Rihanna for the most top 10 singles among artists debuting this century with 31 each, a record he would then break in October of 2018. Drake and Michael Jackson are the first male solo artists in Hot 100 history to accumulate 30 top 10 hits. Non-Stop, which debuted at number 2 on the Hot 100 proper, became Drake's record-extending 6th number 1 on the streaming song charts. Drake debuting 4 songs in the top 10 at once tied the record for most top 10 debuts in general. Drake became the first artist ever to debut multiple songs in the top 10 simultaneously twice in a calendar year, the first time being when he debuted God's Plan and Diplomatic Immunity at once. And Drake tied the Beatles for the most Hot 100 top 10 hits at a single calendar year with 11 each. And again, that's a record Drake surpassed in October of 2018. And those are just the records from that one charting week. And trust me, there's more. With the 3 number 1 singles Drake had this year, he spent a collective of 29 weeks at number 1 in the Hot 100, breaking the Black Eyed Peas and Usher's record. But all those records do come with a price, especially in today's market, because Drake is so fucking overexposed. He has been for a while, but more now than ever, I just want him to go away. He hasn't had any real artistic evolution in years. Hell, if anything, he's only devolving as an artist. Which is why Scorpion was such a shitty album, because it got stale almost immediately. And Drake only had 6 songs out before the album dropped. And although only 2 of them are great, all of them are way better than what was brand new on Scorpion. This album would have been out of ideas if they trimmed it down to a 7-track project, so 25 songs was just a miserable experience. And Drake just kept finding so many new ways to piss me off. And obviously, Scorpion was culturally the biggest album of the year. So of course, it alone had a lot of hits this year. And Drake's featured on a lot as well. Drake's had well over a third of a Hot 100 chart this year, and that number excludes his Lemon remix, which actually allowed that song to hit a new peak and likely make the year-end list, as well as Sicko Mode by Travis Scott, where Drake's heavily featured, but because it's Travis Scott, he doesn't have a featuring credit. So with all of that being said, it's pretty obvious that this year made me absolutely hate Drake, to the point where I really don't want to talk about him because it, like the music, will just get boring and repetitive and very forgettable. But these lists are put together based on the top 10 hit songs that I just can't stand, so with all of that being said, if you can't tell, Drake will be occupying a good chunk of this fucking list.
Shit don't never stop.
Before any of you think this will get very old very quickly, I'll do my best to make a lot of these Drake entries go by quicker than not moving forward. I know a lot of the time the criticism around Drake in general is that he is very boring and uninteresting almost all of the time. But Non-Stop was the very first time I heard a Drake song where I could just tell he was putting in absolutely no effort on his own song. And the album context is beyond maddening. Drake opens the album with a song called Survival, in which he goes on about his career. And beyond a lot of the bars that did aggravate the hell out of me, he ends this intro verse of a song by saying, quote, "This just the intro, let me not get ahead of myself." So Drake's basically saying, oh, this song isn't the first song, it's just an intro verse. When we get into this album proper, it'll be crazy and I will go off and blah 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 blah. Okay, Drake, if that was just a little verse to introduce the album, let's see what it sounds like when the album's in full force. This is all you got? It was the best way to put this album is going to basically embody this for 23 more tracks foot forward. And again, 1 out of 10 album. But Andrew, you're being too unfair. Listen to what Drake has to say, said no one that has ever listened to Drake.
I just flip the switch. I don't know nobody else is doing this.
Go fuck yourself. Does Drake have like some sort of disability that would make him think this flow is actually good? Because that's the only reasonable explanation I can come up with.
Niggas pulling gimmicks 'cause they scared of rap.
Does Drake think that he hasn't been doing that for a lot of his singles this album cycle alone? Look at Nice for What and In My Feelings, both prime examples of a gimmick being used and Drake basically not rapping anywhere on the tracks.
Yeah, I'm light-skinned, but I'm still a dark nigga.
Yup. Drake, the hardest rapper in the game. Dude, the best line you've ever had was about how soft you are. Stick to that story and shut the fuck up otherwise.
I'm an unforgiving, wild-ass dog nigga.
Yeah, that's why you brought Meek Mill out in Boston. Because you don't forgive people. I can't get over how bland this shit sounds. I thought part of it had to be because of the nothingness Drake was putting over it, but no, it really is just bass and sparse trap skitters with nothing else. Drake somehow made a 21 Savage song with far less effort, and I actually thought that was impossible. Thanks for proving me wrong, Drake.
I'm upset.
Number 8.
My head is disrespect.
I know what I said in the summer, but I changed my mind. There's nothing to really talk about, but I'm going to try my best anyways because this song has nothing even remotely passable.
The dash is digi, the schedule busy. My head in a hoodie, my shorty a goodie.
Let's start with a new kid. This is Lil Baby, and he just sucks. His flow's a bargain barrel, his production is generic, the content is the standard shit, and his voice is so fucking annoying. It's common practice to say that he's a generic Young Thug, but saying that is such a disservice to Young Thug. This isn't a Walmart versus Chanel situation. It's a Chanel versus a really shitty Etsy craft. It's really unfortunate that Young Thug co-signs this dude, because whenever they're on a track together, it's just a reminder that Young Thug will always be better than Lil Baby. I heard both of the projects Lil Baby put out this year, and they were easily two of the worst projects of 2018. He's just so uninspired, and although I'm not a crazy fan of acts that use the same generic brag rap formula for each song and also overstuff the hell out of their projects, I'd sure as hell take any of them over Lil Baby. And since the general public will basically take any song that's fed to them in hip-hop, we got 2 top 10 hits from Lil Baby this year. And despite both of them being really, really bad, this would be the worst of the two. So why did this song blow up, you may ask, if you didn't see the title card and just ignored everything I said before this entry.
The dash is digi, the schedule busy. My head in a hoodie, my shorty a goodie.
Drake is so annoyingly huge that he can literally make any known name get a hit. I mean, Look Alive debuted in the top 10 and no one knew who Block Boy JB was before that, and seemingly no one cared after the fact. If only that applied to Lil Baby as well, because he's had way more success following this song than he really should have. But Drake's 40-second intro verse is delivered so flat that if he had anything to say, you just wouldn't care, but it's fitting because Drake basically says nothing. So getting him out of the way, we then move to Lil Baby and...
Cardiac glasses, I won't even peek at you. Yellow Ferrari like Pikachu.
Listen, I like me some Pokemon, and a good reference is a good reference. I wish this came in a better song, but...
My diamond just say Pikachu. I'm a boss, I walk to the club and just Pikachu.
Okay. So Lil Baby's only line worth caring about in this entire song is not only not even his, but it's from Young Thug, the artist he's blatantly trying and failing to rip off. Am I the only one that notices this shit? Like, does anyone care? And keep that line in mind when we look at this line.
I got him waiting and watching what he gon' do. Tryna pee what I do, tryna steal my move.
I have to ask, what moves do you have for people to steal that you haven't stolen yourself?
Lawyer being charged here, Jewish like a voodoo.
Can we please stop stereotyping Jewish lawyers? It wasn't cool to begin with, but it's only getting worse the more people say it. I think what ultimately makes this song unbearable is that it's just nothing amplified into a song. We had a song that did that become a minor hit last year with No Promises by Cheat Codes and Demi Lovato. But at the very least, that had a melody I didn't hate and I can picture it on a good day. Also, it wasn't a huge top 10 hit. I just don't understand what people see in either of these artists. So would I hate a song where both of them team up and neither of them try at all? Yes, indeed.
I'm upset.
Number 7.
My head is disrespect.
Just because I made it the transition music doesn't mean it's not on the list. What am I, crazy?
I'm upset. 100,000 on my head is disrespect.
I mean, let's be honest, we all knew this would be here. I, along with many others, have claimed I'm Upset to be the worst song on Scorpion. And with the context that I hated that album more than seemingly anyone, and remember that this album got pretty panned in these circles, the real shock is that it's only this low. I mean, Drake has made songs before where he's acting like a little bitch, but within the context of what was happening before, and especially right after this got released, it becomes a whole nother level of gross. So as all of you probably know by now, Pusha T dropped an album back in May, and on the closing track, he took a very specific shot shot at Drake, specifically for ghostwriting allegations. Drake then released I'm Upset, which I will circle back around to, but a few days after he released his response called Duppy Freestyle, and it wasn't a bad diss track. Hell, it was better than almost, if not all, of Scorpion. But if you knew of Pusha T before, you kinda knew whatever he put out in response would carry some real weight to it. But I don't think anyone could have seen what was coming next if they didn't already know. In response, Pusha T released The Story of Adidon, and single cover alone is brutally destructive towards Drake. Hell, Drake directly came out and apologized for this blackface photo shoot. That's how bad this shit was. Oh yeah, and on the song itself, Pusha T revealed to the world that Drake had a secret child with a porn star, and also that Drake was going to use his son Adonis to launch an Adidas press run. And Pusha T says all this within the context that Drake is not only a deadbeat dad who isn't respecting the mother of his child, but that his kid deserves more than to be used as a prop for net gain. Oh, and all of this was basically confirmed true since Drake didn't give a proper response on the matter. Although he still continues to shoot subliminal shots at Pusha T in various features, despite the fact that he lost the beef. But all of that needs to have been laid out before we look into the single Drake dropped right before this all went down. But let's first look at what's on the surface with the song, and I do mean the absolute basics. Look at the title. There were some interesting song titles for hits this year, like This Is America or God Is a Woman. You could look at both of those titles and make your own assumptions before even listening to the songs. Hell, God Is a Woman had a ton of controversy based on title alone, mainly from people who didn't even listen to the fucking song, but not the point. However, when you look at the title, I'm Upset, especially when you factor in that Drake was the one who made it, you know what you're getting. Drake's not angry, he's not mad, he's upset. And you know what that means. He's gonna whine and whine like the baby he's not taking care of.
Can't go 50-50 with no hope.
Yeah, that line would have had gross energy without the whole Drake has a kid with a porn star thing. But Drake does have a kid with a porn star, so it's one of the worst lines of the entire year. And you can throw this up there along with it.
Every month, I'm supposed to pay her bills and get her what she wants.
I mean, this isn't Child's Play level of I want to uppercut Drake in the nuts, but like, this is still a really gross sentiment within the real context it was written in. And that's before you get to shit like how Drake only shoots below the neck if he's with a woman. And beyond the fact that I'm fairly certain Drake has never held a real gun before, all I can really say to this line is someone should have told Drake the pull-out method would screw up eventually.
Hate me, never met me in the flesh.
Yeah, it's as if the person you put out in basically all of your music is a real unlikable dick who's been proven to not care about his child or the woman he had it with. Good thing that isn't true, right?
I'm upset.
Number 6.
My head is disrespect.
Here's the thing, I'm Upset is easily the worst song on Scorpion, but at the same time, it wasn't the song that really got under my skin from that album. Thankfully, for content's sake and absolutely nothing else, it was also a single that hit the top 10 the week of Scorpion. And this isn't because of personal attachment or anything like that, and obviously a moral compass will come into play here, and what fucking ever. You want to hear about the songs that bothered me the most this year? Well, here's the not a real hit that was eligible that just got to me for being this special kind of bad.
It don't matter to me.
Before we move forward, let me stress that there are multiple angles to why I hate this just as much as I do. Let's start as light as we can by quickly going over the production. There's a term called type beat, which commonly refers to a standard beat that X artist would go over. For instance, a Drake type beat. This is a Drake type beat. It's a good Drake type beat, better than most of Scorpion, but a Drake type beat all the same. It's really nothing special, unlike the, featured artist, Michael Jackson. Okay, let's just jump right into this argument. I've seen many people address that this was recorded during the same session as Love Never Felt So Good, a 2014 hit that was also the same type of quote-unquote collaboration that Don't Matter to Me is with Justin Timberlake. Now, there are two things for me to address from this fact specifically. For one, this session wasn't in 2008 or something like that and just didn't get out because of Jackson's death. It was in 1983. Not only was this before Drake was even born, but that was right after the Thriller album came out. So Michael Jackson had around 3 decades worth of time for those songs to have gotten released. But my hunch is that he maybe didn't release the portion found on Don't Matter to Me because he sounds fucking horrible. Michael Jackson had a phenomenal catalog of vocal performances, and although I haven't heard every song Michael Jackson has ever sung on, I'm inclined to believe those who have when they say this is easily the worst vocal output that Michael Jackson ever had. And knowing that it's Drake who made this shit get a proper release is only more aggravating than it would have been if it was just some random label head. And I guarantee that Drake only went with this in particular due to the lyrics. Not only could he have a song called Don't Matter to Me eventually follow up the single he released directly before this, but the outro is some of the most basic fuckboy shit I heard this year. Again, rather fitting that Drake went with this. Anyways, the second thing. In regards specifically to the other top 10 hit from that recording session, Love Never Felt So Good. That song is definitely another example of grave robbery. And since I've exclaimed many times before that I'm a huge Justin Timberlake fan, I bet a lot of you will expect me to be hypocritical and dismiss grave robbery claims while digging into this Drake song. But that's where you're more wrong than right. All of Jackson's album Escaped, which of course includes Love Never Felt So Good, really should have never gotten released. And since Michael Jackson's family actually doesn't benefit from the Michael Jackson estate itself at all, it's rather disgusting to see posthumous work from Jackson get released. But there's one thing to note that makes Love Never Felt So Good slightly less gross than Don't Matter to Me. On NSYNC's last album, there was a song called Gone, which became the second single and ultimately peaked at number 11 on the Hot 100. The song itself was written by Justin Timberlake and Wade J. Robson, and according to Timberlake himself,
I originally wrote that song for Michael Jackson. I just got word that it wasn't, that they had turned the song down. I guess Michael did hear it and called me on the phone and said he wanted to cut the record, but he wanted it to be a duet between himself and I. I'm on the phone, I'm literally punching myself in the face because I said I can't do that.
If Gone had been cut from Celebrity, Justin Timberlake and Michael Jackson could have very likely collaborated while Jackson was still alive. So when Michael's estate or record label reached out to Timberlake, he probably took the opportunity to make up for the fact that Gone by Michael Jackson and Justin Timberlake never existed. Although he super went against Prince's wishes during his 2018 Super Bowl performance, so maybe I'm being too nice with the whole Justin Timberlake does grave robbery thing. But my point in bringing that up is that Jackson wanted to work with Timberlake in his lifetime. Michael Jackson died 3 months after Drake's first Hot 100 entry. So unless Michael Jackson was a big Degrassi fan, chances are he had no idea who the fuck Drake even was. But since Drake has so much fucking money and the estate doesn't remotely care about Jackson's family wishes, the Don't Matter to Me recording came out, despite how horrible Jackson sounds. And it's mixed all weird to try and cover shit, but ultimately it just makes it sound horrendous. And you wanna know the worst part? That isn't even the worst part. The argument for it being the worst is very valid, but I think we're overlooking something Drake says on his second verse.
You call me weak and you tested my manhood as we yelled at each other. You wanted me to go and put my hands on you just to show you I love you. Know I can't.
Okay, so maybe I'm viewing this all wrong, but Drake's saying that this girl he's with wants him to hit her. But Drake won't hit her because he's such a, quote, good guy. But as you can probably tell by now, I'm not buying that. And this isn't about the lyrics on Child's Play or the circumstances around his Kid Cudi diss track. Hear me out. Do I think that Drake actually hit this girl? Probably not. Hell, I'd be kind of surprised if he actually did, to be completely honest with you. However, the bit I just played you, it's weird how he says, you know I can't. Right? Like, you know I can't is the way you say you can do it later or some shit like that. But here's the full line that comes after Drake's girlfriend supposedly asks him to hit her.
You know I can't jeopardize both our reputation.
Okay. So Drake doesn't want to abuse his girlfriend for the main reason not being because it's one of the grossest things you could ever do, but he doesn't want to put his hands on her in an abusive way because of what it would do to their reputations. He doesn't express that he won't abuse his girlfriend because of all the harm it would do to her directly. He expresses that he won't do it because he wouldn't want to put mud onto his public figure. Hey Drake, fuck you! So much of what I said about Drake all comes down to how he doesn't fucking care about anything but his image and himself. All he wants to do is inflate his own ego and social stature, and he's willing to do anything to help that. Again, if it weren't for Pusha T, we would have found out about Drake's son due to a shoe deal. He would have literally been using his son for sneaker promotion, and that's about all the attention he would have given him, because I'm fairly certain Drake would shoot his kid out of a cannon if it would get him more attention without hurting his good guy image. An image Drake doesn't even try to reflect in most of his music. Fuck this song, fuck this album, fuck the Jackson estate and money-hungry labels that loop their corpses. Fuck anyone who backed this man up and allowed any of this shit to happen or almost happen. And fuck everyone who's willing to prop this shit up. This song is getting a radio push right now, and if we make this a full-on hit in 2019, I will be livid. This not being a dominating hit is probably the only thing keeping this lower than it is, so let's keep it that way. Drake, a wise man once said, suck my dick!
I'm upset.
Number 5.
My
head is disrespect.
What's telling is that after everything I've said about Drake, he is far from the worst person to have had success this year. In fact, this year more than ever, it really felt like we were giving every scumbag we could have hit. Kodak Black got a song to debut at number 2. We not only gave Tyga a comeback, but we also gave him a top 10 hit in doing so. Chris Brown got a top 10 hit about how awesome it would be to be him. Rich the Kid got a big and minor hit. Famous Dex got some buzz. Hell, I'm shocked we didn't make R. Kelly's I Admit a smash. Although I guess a 19-minute song is where people finally draw the line. However, this year we found out that an up-and-coming rapper pled guilty to use of a child in a sexual performance. And immediately after we found that out, we made his then current single chart, and it was an immediate hit. Let's get this out of the way. 6ix9ine being a pedophile is not why I'm including this song on the list. But it is the reason anyone knew about him to begin with, and I think pedophilia isn't something we should just sweep under the rug. But to focus on just the song itself, a lot of people are willing to defend this song because it has what they call amazing production. I don't get it. This isn't a gag or me being too old to get what the kids are into or anything like that. This production just doesn't work at all. You get this hauntingly glassy synth that is far too glossy for its own good, and it's played very slow over the very lazy trap skitters, and no matter what, it does not work. It doesn't work on its own. It doesn't work with a triplet flow over it.
My nigga on stick shit, get air love, nigga on some real shit.
It doesn't work when a rap legend goes over it.
Only God can judge you, I'ma sentence you to death, my nigga.
And it sure as hell doesn't work when 6ix9ine howls over it.
Man, that's really all I use for the kick out the door.
Now before we move forward, I want to address something. I don't think 6ix9ine is an outright bad performer. I think he has more misses than hits, sure, but he's landed more times than some modern charting acts. I mean, 6ix9ine is a very one-dimensional artist, but again, with his gimmick, that is workable, and it has worked in the past. But when the song just doesn't work in the sound, I can't really fall back onto the lyrics to elevate it. I know the title of this song comes from the Harmony Korine film of the same name, which from what I've seen and heard, it is genuinely unsettling and sometimes hard to take in, which on paper does align with this song since it also has very unsettling implications and isn't too easy to listen to. But then you realize this song was likely named after the film because it's about a group of children living meaningless lives full of misbehaving and thrill-seeking. And then you turn to the song itself having nothing remotely close to that to say, and you add on implications that could go hand in hand with 6ix9ine being accused of and also separately pleading guilty to use of a child in a sexual performance, you're left with this absolutely gross feeling attached to a song that also happens to sound like an obnoxious mess. And you can argue that the song doesn't even have a moment where you can even connect the charges to said line, and that'd be a fair argument if it wasn't factually incorrect.
I don't fuck with no old hoes, only new hoes.
And sure, he didn't write that line for it to be aligned with his pedophilic charges, but when the shoe fits, am I right?
I'm upset.
Number 4.
My head is disrespect.
However, shock value can only take you so far, especially in 2018 where almost everyone is desensitized to this shit. But the point is people are willing to defend an artist as long as they like the music. And in the case of the artist I just talked about, I get why 6ix9ine has been popular. Even if next to nothing about Gummo clicks, I can kinda see the angle people came at in defending the music itself. In fact, Gummo isn't any higher because on its own, 6ix9ine's performance isn't horrible, and the follow-ups to Gummo weren't too bad either. Kuda and Billy weren't great or anything, but they were good. And I'll say it, Kiki is genuinely a very great song that I listened to a lot this year. However, 6ix9ine's whole appeal was that he was a huge personality as a vocalist, and the degree in which he yells isn't that much of an easy thing to replicate. But then 6ix9ine released Gotti, which would be one of, if not the absolute worst song he's ever made. And it flopped immediately because it was this desaturated auto-tune mush that was universally hated by just about everyone. So it was clear that people hated 6ix9ine doing that sound. Or at least you'd think that! Even if 6ix9ine doesn't sound as bad as he did on Gotti, he's still way out of line if he thinks this is the type of shit that will work for him. I mean, obviously this was a top 3 hit, but for longevity's sake, this won't carry him much farther. But to circle back around to a Young Money artist who I ran out of patience for very quickly this year, Nicki Minaj. And like Drake, she had a lead-off single this year that I actually really liked. But then her Way Too Long album came out, and I was left wondering how I had hope for the thing in the first place. But nothing on Queen proper was nearly as as bad as Fifi, and there was some really bad songs on that album. The claim that 6ix9ine was a one-trick pony were completely valid, but that does not mean he should have tried to do drastically different things. I mean, he didn't really try a new thing. He's made it more than clear he doesn't try.
But are you serious about your craft is I guess what I'm asking.
No, literally not. Pussy got that wet wet, got that drip drip, got that super soak. I hit that, she a Fifi, honey and Kiki, she eat my dick like it's free. That's not even, what the fuck? Like, I didn't say, I didn't put no effort into that shit.
And on that topic, Nicki Minaj has confirmed that it took her a total of 15 minutes to put her verses together. Hell, the first portion of her initial verse got made within 5 minutes after, quote, hearing murder beats craftsmanship. This is what said craftsmanship sounds like. Yeah, this really gross oscillating synth that sounds like it's drowning is true craftsmanship, alright. More like craftsman shit. Okay, it's one thing that everyone is snubbing the hell out of Tinashe left and right, but to mispronounce her name to fit the rhyme, something Nicki has frequently not done, is genuinely frustrating, especially since this song was way bigger than anything Tinashe herself made. Just fucking wonderful.
Niggas say they killing people, but I really fucking do it.
Just an FYI, there's no remote evidence that would point to 6ix9ine having actually killed anyone by himself. I mean, you think someone who looks like this would be a killer? Although there is the whole killer clown stereotype, Pennywise is a thing after all. And while we're on the topic of how 6ix9ine looks, fuck all bite, why are we fine with him saying the N-word? He's not black, he's Hispanic, and for whatever reason, we're just fine with non-black but also non-white people saying it. As all of you should know, and if you don't, you are way too young to be watching my channel and you should leave. That word was originally created as a racial slur to demean African American people. And obviously in current day, they have more than taken the word back by owning the word, but giving it a positive connotation in doing so. However, if you're white and say it, you're the bad one, and that's genuinely okay, and that should not change. That is not my argument in any way, shape, or form. But this word was again made to be used as harmful towards black people. Hispanics are not included in that group. However, so many Hispanic artists use that word and no one bats an eye. 6ix9ine says it, Lil Pump has said it on tracks like D-Rose, and of course I Love It with Kanye, and even Pitbull said it in his music before. Pitbull, nigga, I'm that monster. But again, no one seems to care. I mean, again, white teenager who knows nothing here, but are you really okay with this? I mean, in the end of the day, it's your call, but it just doesn't bode well with me personally. And in general, that's kinda how I feel about 6ix9ine as a whole. The dude's been outed as a pedophile who doesn't take anything he does seriously. And on a Breakfast Club interview, he said that he can get away with anything. Yet time after time again, we've been propping his music up, and now his songs get big debuts on the Hot 100, even if they never last. I hope this dude fades into irrelevancy sooner rather than later.
I'm upset.
Number 3.
My head is disrespect.
In my intro, I stated that Bad Bunny was the biggest act in Latin music this year, and I already know the people who know anything about the Latin charts will tell me that I am way wrong and that Ozuna is a way bigger deal. My reasoning for saying Bad Bunny is that he not only had a #1 hit this year, but he also had other hits. Ozuna, on the other hand, has only really had one minor hit on the Hot 100. You can tell I wrote this before Taki Taki came out. It actually just so happens that Ozuna's one US hit and Bad Bunny's second are the same song. It also has 4 other Latin artists, and it fucking sucks. 7 minutes. This song is 7 fucking minutes of hell. And yeah, I don't speak Spanish, so when I listen to this, I'm basically bored for those 7 minutes. But translate it and fuck everyone here. Don't get fooled by the 36 peak this song had. It was in the top 40 for weeks, months even. Even more than a few songs I've covered in the seasonal top 20 rankings. Clearly people like this song to keep streaming it because obviously the radio didn't pick this up like they have with every other big Latin song in the past 2.5 years because it's 7 fucking minutes. Okay, my point is that without radio, getting a Hot 100 hit in this genre is not easy. Clearly, the public had to like it enough to make it strong enough to barely exceed 20 weeks and keep it relatively consistent enough to make it a year-end contender. So what's the song about to keep people coming back? Well, Te Boté roughly translates to I kicked you out, or more relevantly, I dumped you. And also, boté is apparently a really harsh word since its context could be placed in throwing out the trash, and that's what they were going for since on the cover art there is literally a woman in the fucking trash. Now, obviously because it's not as as easy for me to pick this one apart, I'm only going to go over a couple bars that really piss me off, and then I'm going to refer you to someone who knows what the hell they're talking about here. Sound good? I hope it does, because Ozuna doesn't. Although I'm not familiar with Ozuna's work lyrically, he sounds like shit on everything I've heard him on. Once again, I wrote this before Taki Taki, so I'd say that's probably his best performance, but he's still the worst performer on that song. But either way, I definitely get why the people who understand Latin music absolutely hate this guy. Everyone else sounds uninteresting as all hell over this really moody and painfully underdone Latin trap beat, and that'd be one bad thing if what they were saying wasn't just the worst shit. Bad Bunny literally says that this girl is trash and that she's so broken he can't recycle her. Like, what the fuck is that? And those are the opening bars of the first verse on, and I can't stress this enough, a 7-minute song. Yeah, this is hell. Ignoring how funny that can actually come across due to the direct translation, fuck you. In fact, fuck all of you. If you want to see someone pick apart the entire song while also knowing what they're talking about, go watch the Radical Douche's video on the song. I'll leave it in the description and also in the end card of the video. And to end this segment the right way,
Vayas a cagar. I'm upset.
number 2.
My head is disrespect.
Alright, we all knew this was happening, and I've been dreading this part specifically for months, because I know this will anger a lot of people. I know that a good majority of the dislikes on this video will be over my inclusion of this song and how I treat this artist. And I do get it, to the point where I did hesitate including this on the list. And trust me when I say, I don't let others get in the way of my opinions or what I'm willing to say / include on these lists. But talking about what's wrong with this song was hard enough to begin with, but under the circumstances that led this song to hit number 1, it only became way harder. But at the same time, when I found out that this was a number 1 hit, I knew I couldn't just leave it off the list. I know I don't have much reach, and I know that people will think I'm insensitive for doing this, and that nothing I will say once I finish this point will matter to those people, but when you use suicide as a threat to get your way, I have a fucking problem. I will state this again. To his friends, family, and all of his fans that were devastated when XXXTentacion was murdered in Deerfield Beach, Florida, I'm sorry, and I do mean that. Also, I do know how this feels. I was a huge fan of Christina Grimmie, and if you don't know the story, in 2016, when she was only 22 years old, she was shot and killed in Orlando, Florida at her own meet and greet. I know exactly what it's like to see someone whose music you loved get so senselessly murdered in Florida at such a young age. So even if you don't want to hear me out, and there's nothing I could say that will make you feel any differently, let me at least say this before you skip ahead or leave the video. If his music connected with you, that's okay. I personally don't get it, but that's okay. I don't make these videos to change people's stances. I only do this to flesh out my own opinion or give you more context for something, like I did when I put Jocelyn Flores on last year's worst list. Just know I'm not doing this to anger anyone. I'm doing this because I feel very strongly about suicide, and if you don't believe that, I made a 24-minute video detailing the times in my life I was suicidal, so go watch that and tell me I have no right to talk about this topic while you bump Logic's 1-800-273-8255, despite the fact that Logic has said that he was never suicidal. Anyways, the reason this isn't topping the list kinda comes down to the production. I've said before that beat is fine enough. I don't really like it that much. On the surface, the sunken drums and rough and kind of annoying melody are kinda weak, and the plucked elements on the final hook, even if ignorable, are really annoying when you focus in on them. But all of that together under X's delivery, I do kinda get it. And putting that line aside for a minute, the content here really is the standard sad boy and fuckboy shtick XXXTentacion did numerous times before. And even if his performance wasn't all that good in comparison to other performances he's given, like on Going Down or on his utterly botched hook that got used on the Carter 5's worst track Don't Cry, fine, it's passable. But being completely honest, XXXTentacion would have been a way better artist if he hadn't made all these melodic R&B-esque hip-hop songs, and if he just rapped about stuff that wasn't girl-related. I stand by the claim that his verse on Slipknot is genuinely very good, and unless he has good shit in the vault, it will be his career best performance, hands down. But as one of the many people that really hated 17, there wasn't a moment on that album that genuinely pissed me off more than the worst moment on this song. So, the first 2 bars in the chorus, XXXTentacion slurs his speech to the point where I genuinely can't tell what he's saying. Now, I already know people are going to try to use him saying that he's someone who's afraid to let go as an excuse to what he's about to say, but to sum up a 4-minute rant on my stance, nothing can be said that will allow this to be acceptable. Now let me make my stance here perfectly clear. Saying XXXTentacion wasn't actually suicidal is genuinely a disgusting thing to say. I've studied XXXTentacion for worse lists more than some of his fans may have. He definitely had struggles with depression, and yes, he was also suicidal. I do not want to be looked at like I'm trying to dismiss those feelings, because I'm not. I know that feeling. I've had that feeling. The real problem here is that XXXTentacion thought not only that he could threaten to literally kill himself if the girl he was with wanted to leave him, but he also thought that mentality was normal. Normal enough to put it in the chorus of his lead single to the follow-up album of his very successful debut. And that, beyond how gross that sentiment is my real problem with that line. Especially that line being on a #1 hit song. Because that mentality wasn't exclusive to XXXTentacion. No, it's very much a real thing. Especially in teenagers or teenage-brained adults who don't know how to properly cope when things aren't going their way. That state doesn't always go straight to threatening suicide, but it's involved in a song like Lucid Dreams not only existing, but being one of the hugest hits of 2018, peaking at #2. And that's why I'm putting this song on my worst list as high as I am despite XXXTentacion's death. Because normalizing shitty behavior is such a problem, yet I see it more and more as the days go on. Yes, properly addressing mental health is insanely important. But at the same time, you can't just let people do or say literally anything they want, because the horrible always finds a way to get to the top. Sure, this wasn't a radio hit in the slightest, even if I did hear it on pop and urban radio more than I would have liked. But do you want to see one of the most haunting videos I've seen in a while? The video you just saw was sad being played at a middle school dance, and the crowd of these 11 to 14-year-olds singing along. They sang along to the suicide line. They were able to sing along to that suicide line because they were familiar with it. It's fucked. I don't understand how people are just okay with something like that happening. Because normalizing people using suicide as a threat means suicide is taken less seriously. Because a lot of these people who threaten suicide in the vein XXXTentacion did, a decent chunk of the time don't actually go through with it. That makes the people who are very suicidal due to their mental health or depression or the like also get taken less seriously, which can directly lead to said people taking their own life away. Do you want that? Because letting XXXTentacion get away with that, never mind all the accusations of abuse he had against him, just because he was so unfairly killed, is quite frankly one of the most disgusting things I've seen all year. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I communicated any of that right. But the point I'm trying to make is that we cannot start normalizing this kind of behavior. Because if we do, we're quite frankly just as bad as these monsters who hurt people for their own gain. And I say this because unless something changes soon, XXXTentacion will likely go down in history as this misunderstood legend, and songs like Jocelyn Flores and this will go down as timeless masterpieces. And sorry to his fans and stuff, but that's not fucking okay. And I just have to hope that my historical assumptions aren't true, and that XXXTentacion won't go down in that light. Because I know what happens when artists that weren't the best people go down in history. Tupac was a convicted abuser. You don't really hear about that one much, do you? And from here, before this #1 that I absolutely do not want to talk about, let's get through the dishonorable mentions. Absolutely nothing here is good. The only reason this missed the list is because Actually Not Hayden said this song is for kids, because Selena Gomez was a child actor and Marshmello was basically a cartoon character, and now I can't unsee it. Also, this isn't the worst thing Marshmello had this year, because this is. Oh, and speaking of Anne-Marie, bad girlfriend, I'm a bad girlfriend. This wasn't a single at all, but it has the worst lyric of the entire year, and I refuse to ignore it. I don't think it's cheating if I'm kissing other women. I hate you, Anne-Marie. You're the worst. Not gonna lie, I really wanted to put this on the list proper, but I realized that A, I've already said everything I can about this, and B, the City Girls really elevate this just enough. This is still absolutely shit though.
I like me better when I'm with you.
You know, I trust how Billboard goes about their charts and stuff, but you cannot tell me that this was a bigger hit in 2018 than Pray For Me was. In terms of the song itself, I never want to hear it again.
Turn the lights down low.
We gave Ganache a second hit this year, and I can never forgive you for that. You know, I wanted to like this. Some of the lines here are actually pretty solid, and flipping the Biggie sample was cool, but the comments towards Young Thug can read as transphobic, and the comments towards Designer make me genuinely angry as someone who has special needs. So for that, fuck you, Nicki Minaj. Also, the minute-long interlude thing they put at the end of this song was actually pointless and only hurts the song more. That Drake line was still amusing though.
Drip too hard, don't stand too close, you gon' fuck around and drown off this way.
Sucks.
I woke up in Chris Brown's body.
I stand by everything I said during the spring with this, but knowing that Bulk Noise uses my lists in his community videos, I just had to contribute to the total score this song will get. Because any opportunity I can take to say fuck Lil Dicky or fuck Chris Brown, I'm taking it.
You're such a fucking hoe, I love it.
Listen, the full art piece isn't bad, but the song on its own, which is all I'm talking about for this entry, and all I usually talk about in general here, is very not good. Now please stop complaining on my MySpace page.
I wanna be your endgame.
This one was on the list until about a month ago. Despite not being remotely close to the year end, this was a big hit and it was fucking everywhere for like 3 months, and I hated every second of it. This Taylor Swift song has rap features from Future and Ed Sheeran. That's the type of sentence you should only get from a Mad Lib. That ad lib from Ed Sheeran. That's my favorite part of the whole song. Why, you may ask? It's because it's the only part of the song that has any spark to it. Oh, and since it's a song off of Reputation, this type of shit is in there somewhere.
I swear I don't love the drama, it loves me.
Okay, that's it. I want to finish this before I put a hole in my window.
Endgame.
I'm upset.
Number 1.
Head I can't accept, yeah.
There's a fair argument to be made about the rules for one's best and worst list. My rules are super lenient, 2 weeks in the top 40, and that's it. Songs that start strong and fizzle out within the month are eligible, while songs that are around for a long while and peak at say 41 aren't. A song like Don't Matter to Me by Drake is eligible, while a song like All Girls Are the Same by Juice WRLD, which actually has a real shot at sneaking onto the year-end list, isn't eligible. Admittedly, my rules are a little broken, but it's really better than being forced to only use the year-end list. Because we can have really notable songs be hits, and they even stick around for a long while, but because they weren't only charting in one tracking year, they don't get put onto that list that most people remember hits by. And you can argue to why the year-end list is the best way to make our own personal lists, but personally, I just don't care about that. Because sometimes going by those rules, you evade talking about horrible songs that were big and were hits. Yeah, I don't do that. Sure, Sad would be a bad enough song to top the list, and it will be topping other lists, I guarantee that. But there was a worse song that was pretty big this year, and if you knew it was eligible, this was a really obvious candidate for topping my list. And to the shock of no one, a Kodak Black and XXXTentacion collaboration is Andrew Prep's worst hit song of 2018.
I can eat rolling pins, why? Everybody notice me, yeah.
Oh great, the two artists I wanted left in 2017 not only had a hit together this year, but also have 2 songs in the top 20 of the very last week of this Billboard year. Just fucking wonderful. So this has basically been locked for this spot all year, and this segment was going to honestly be really easy for me to knock out, as I claim this to be one of the worst songs I've ever heard. Ever. And of course my distaste for both artists that I made very apparent on my worst list last year. But again, when XXXTentacion died and all the conversation that's still circling around how to even criticize anything about him, it got harder for me to address him. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about this song as if X wasn't on it, and then we'll transition him in. So apparently people actually like this song, and I just don't remotely get it. Ignoring the content for this song for just a little longer, the production is genuinely one of the worst I've heard on the Hot 100 in the past couple years. The atonal melody that gets formed off of these disgusting horns just makes my skin crawl.
Hey, everything be like off the top these days. Like,
even if the content and performances were good, I just can't get behind this production. Luckily, both the content and performances are shit. It's no secret that I think Kodak Black is a bottom 5 rapper in the mainstream from the past couple of years. His voice is just so fucking annoying, and every song I hear him on, he is the worst part of it, hands down. I'd say the song is the exception, but we can't just ignore the fact that this is probably the whiniest tone he has ever had on a track. Although part of that might be hand in hand with the content, and oh my god.
ain't got shit I need, bitch.
So on the pre-chorus, Kodak Black is not only complaining that he's not getting enough love from this girl, but when she asks him to go slow with her, he says, quote, "Maybe I'm not your speed, bitch." And then he goes on to complain that she's got no money for whatever reason. And then we get to the chorus proper, where Kodak Black complains that he can't enjoy life because of pressure from the media. Yeah, let's not forget that so-called pressure comes from him being arrested for armed robbery, as well as being indicted for rape. But then we get to Kodak's verse, where he then complains that now this girl is bad for him, only to immediately follow with how this girl isn't going to do shit for him. And then he complains that this girl wasn't there for him when he was, quote, going through tragedy, which again would be his arrest for being a convicted felon that owned a weapon, as well as fleeing from police, and then being charged with armed robbery and false imprisonment a month later. And that would be a good segue into XXXTentacion, but okay, listen. The man died, and I've already said my piece during Sad segment and last year during Jocelyn Flores and Look at Me segment, so I'm just going to focus on how annoying I find X here and not deal with who he was as a person. Although there are many moments where X has annoyed me on a basic level, this is definitely up there.
Hello, shorty, on my road, box up a Nokia poke and you.
Listen, these videos are about me being honest and expressing my opinions. I know it's not great to say not good things about someone who died, so I'm sorry, but this is probably the worst guest verse I've ever heard. I'm not over-exaggerating. I've heard plenty of guest verses in my life, especially this year, but this is genuinely horrible. It's a bunch of stupid, nonsensical bullshit, and in the one instance it's not.
Last time I wiped the bitch, she told her what I beat her.
Alright. So on October 24th, 2018, Pitchfork released a secretly recorded tape from some random time during 2016. And in the tape, XXXTentacion was not only bragging about how many people he stabbed, and that he was featured in the news for stabbing people, but he said the following. And by the way, the Pitchfork article with the full audio is in the description in case anyone somehow tries to claim that I'm taking shit out of context. The only reason I'm cutting it up just as much as I am is due to copyright and nothing else.
She fell through on every occasion until I started fucking her up. She made one mistake, and from there, the whole cycle went down. The girl was scared for her life.
I don't know how anyone can hear that and try to deflect it. XXXTentacion, right here, so fucking blatantly, admits that he, quote, started fucking her up, and I don't care how much XXXTentacion's music might have helped you, you can't be this fucking irresponsible and ignore something as serious as this. At least I keep saying that. Because after this audio released, I saw so many XXXTentacion fans and general hip-hop fans expressing how they just don't care that they don't buy it. Even with blunt evidence straight from his mouth. And honestly, I'm struggling to keep fighting this battle. I've had this keep saying it mentality for so long. If we keep expressing it, people will continue to know about it. But really, everyone already knows about the accusations by now. And it really feels like a majority of people don't care. XXXTentacion has made how much of a scumbag he was known. Not even just in the obvious case of Sad in this song. It's spread all throughout his music one way or the other. Usually not as blunt, but it's not hard to find. His fans know, and they don't care. Look at Me blew up because Drake jacked the flow, and when people found out, they went to it and picked it up because it was a banger to them. The cover art for that song is his mugshot, but no one cared because they were desensitized to people in the genre doing illegal shit. And then came 17. And 17, despite the fact that I still think it is genuinely one of the worst projects I've ever heard, it connected to people. A lot. It had a really notable album bomb the week Lil Uzi Vert got one. And the highest debuting track that week was Jocelyn Flores, a song I put on my worst list last year, and if anything, it would rise if I were to remake that list now. And for a full and angry piece about the song from before X died, it will be one of the top links in the description. But to recap what that song made the list for, never mind the fact that XXXTentacion didn't really have any real commentary about her death, and that she was only really used as a prop for her ex's depression, and that's a take Jocelyn's family agrees with, by the way. But not my point right now. He posted this to his Instagram story. On brand, he makes her taking her life about him, expressing if she was thinking about his own best interest before she went through with it. And as I highlighted before, the post ends with him saying, "I hate you all. I hate you, Jocelyn." And maybe that doesn't fully dig in because you can't picture what she looked like in the fashion X did when posting this, so let me say his final quote again. "I hate you all, I hate you, Jocelyn." And X fans, now that you know that, do you feel any differently towards him? Or towards me for that matter? Because that song meant a lot to you. And even if I do feel less of you on paper if that basic and manipulative song touched you greatly, there is literally nothing I can say to change your mind. Nothing I can say will change your mind. Even if major trigger warning, I show you this clip of X punching a girl. That won't change your stance. And for those that agree with me, all this piece is doing is fueling your own narrative. And someone also couldn't change your mind on this whole thing. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't care to look into or bring up. You see this girl here? Just some girl you don't know, right? This is at his Lonely Star on Twitter, but her real name is Geneva. Geneva is the ex-girlfriend that XXXTentacion abused. Why do I bring her up, you may ask? These are the 2 tweets she put out the day after he died. So X's infamous victim of abuse was beyond sad about his murder. In fact, she even retweeted a post from Rolling Loud, in which they posted a tribute video, which was captioned XXXTentacion Forever. And that video was soundtracked by Sad. And the thing to note there is that X's suicide threat on the song again very likely wasn't just an outlandish thought he had while writing the song. In the court documents, you can find that X threatened suicide against Geneva by hanging a microwave over a full bathtub. And with all that said, along with all the details you can easily find from the whole case, Geneva was heartbroken by the death of the man that utterly hurt her. And you can find the pictures of her black eyes very easily. It wasn't just a couple of light hits. Although any attacks on your significant others are very showing that you were worse than scum. However, you could reasonably try to argue why she felt that way. But as she said herself, we should leave her alone. And I agree with that. We should not pry her for information on her stances or details or anything like that. Because Geneva isn't just the girl XXXTentacion abused, she's her own person. And if she doesn't care about the abuse anymore, then why should we? I know I still care because domestic abuse or abuse in general is fucking disgusting and should be taken insanely seriously. But if the abuse at hand was from someone you feel personally attached to, does it really matter? It should, but you care more about propping up someone you connected with, even if you've never met them, and they had no idea that you even existed because of that one-sided link you have. And with a young death, X's legacy will live on, especially with that very hard-to-get posthumous #1 hit, as well as cosigns from Jay-Z on Drake's album, to Lil Wayne, to probably Kanye West, and so on. X is not going to just be forgotten like he would have been if he hadn't been so unfairly murdered. With all the information I've presented, you haven't had a change on your stance, have you? It should be telling, but after everything that's happened in the past couple of years, it's honestly not even shocking anymore. I may think shit still is, and I can keep telling myself that all of this isn't normal, but how long can something be not normal before it becomes normal? When I proclaim that we should keep this very real history and stop denying that XXXTentacion was a horrible person, it won't change anyone's stance. So with that said, I'm done talking about this like this. You can argue that if people from Malcolm X all the way to Gucci Mane died at 20, they wouldn't have been able to turn around and become who they died as / are today. The difference is that X did die at 20. And yes, he was making some real moves to try and change his image. But again, he still died a scumbag who was still charting a song where he threatens to kill himself if he didn't get his own way. If he lived for another 30 years, he could have evolved into a better person. But because of the senseless violence in Florida, he died someone who was still in court about abusing someone he was supposed to put on a pedestal. And post-death, XXXTentacion has won awards, has batshit fans, and he's been given more after his lifetime than most people get during theirs. Because society is just fine with the worst types of people getting propped up in the first place. Look at politics, look at music, look everywhere around you. You say you want change, but do you actually do anything about it? Because if you stay dormant and stop caring, nothing will change. Someone you don't like can be accused of some shit, but someone you love will get accused of worse. And which thing do you get more vocal about? Which thing do you get more mad about? Because I'll be vocal when someone I like does or says bad shit. And even if no one cares that XXXTentacion is openly stating that he's been accused of one of the worst crimes you can commit, I get fucking mad. So who cares? I do. I may get mad about stupid music that no one really cares about anymore, but when I say that Roll in Peace is the worst hit song of 2018, and maybe one of the worst songs I've ever heard, I fucking mean it. But you don't care. That's what this all comes down to. You don't care as long as it's not something to help you or your own narrative. You can go ahead and try to separate the art from the artist itself, even when the horrible shit the artist has done heavily bleeds into the music. And if you're content with that, even if I really don't respect you on that level, there's nothing I can do to change that. XXXTentacion died a garbage human being who truthfully made really shitty music overall. But at the end of the day, who gives a shit? My name's Andrew Prep. Best list coming soon, and I'm genuinely looking forward to that.
Good night, everybody!
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you wouldn't mind leaving a like to help cancel out all the dislikes I'm probably going to get, that would be very appreciated. And if you want to check out a video that I actually took part in, that'll be in the end card. And if you want to see a Tay review that is actually, good because it's by someone who knows what they're talking about, go check them out and check their worst list out while you're at it. My name is Interprep, and I'll talk to you guys later.